Hello, welcome to ACR demola, and today's lesson we're going to be covering thrombosis. Again, now we're linking on from atherosclerosis. So atherosclerosis happens, not good. Thrombosis, things get even worse. So we're going to go and describe this process now. Okay, so just to kick things off, we're going to begin with a recap on atherosclerosis. So we zoom in, we said there was 4 stages: endothelial dysfunction, inflammatory response, plaque formation, and then that leads to increased blood pressure, which begins your cycle of positive feedback. So we're just going to write here, cycle, positive feedback. Yep. Cool. Now, what can happen, yeah? We're accepting that there's an increase in blood pressure because of that positive feedback cycle. So you can see here with the arrows, it's pushing up against the wall of your blood vessel, your artery, yeah? And when that happens, eventually it can burst, yeah? So the wall of the artery bursts, and this allows your red blood cells, as you can see here, they start to leak out. So blood's leaking out of the arteries, obviously no bueno for us. Now, when the blood vessel ruptures, blood leaks out. And again, you need to follow this stage when you're giving the answer in exam. Reduced blood flow to organs, less oxygen delivery to cells, inability to perform aerobic respiration, hence cells die. Now, after that spiel, we know the body needs to react. It needs to do something that's going to restore that blood flow. Hence, in an attempt to do that, the process of thrombosis will occur. So this is why we have thrombosis. It's because we're trying to restore that blood flow. So we want to seal off the vessel that's just ruptured. We want to seal that off to restore the blood flow. That is thrombosis, blood clotting, which we're going to get into now. Okay, similarly, we need to go through a process, right? We're going to go through a process, the clotting cascade. Now, step 1, the platelet plug formation. So you can see here by the diagram, right, that we're going to form a platelet plug, which is going to initially cover up that cell damage. What's happening? Damaged blood vessel will release collagen fibers. Really important. Really, really important that you know that's collagen, yeah? Cool. The collagen is going to interact with your platelets, causing your platelets to 3 A's: activate, aggregate, accumulate, yeah? I really want you to remember 3 A's for what the platelets do. They activate, aggregate, and accumulate. Now, that will help you to form the platelet plug, as you can see in the diagram. Cool. Now, those platelets, they're going to release a protein called thromboplastin, yeah? And what thromboplastin is, it's almost like, it's an enzyme, it's like a coenzyme, yeah? It interacts with vitamin K and calcium ions, and that's going to help to convert prothrombin to thrombin. Your prothrombin, the inactive, so let's get this down, inactive, into active thrombin. That's your next step. So, thromboplastin, released by the platelet plug, interacts with vitamin K and calcium ions, and that will cause conversion of inactive prothrombin to active thrombin. This is your rate limiting step, right? So this kind of regulates how quickly we can blood clot. If we can't release that thromboplastin, if we can't make thrombin, then that's going to affect the rate at which we blood clot a lot. Now, thrombin is another enzyme. Cool. Guys, really, really important terminology that you cannot forget. Soluble fibrinogen into insoluble fibrin. So soluble fibrinogen to insoluble fibrin. Yeah? Thrombin enzyme converts fibrinogen into fibrin. And in your exams, just remember to say soluble and insoluble because you do gain marks for that. Finally, we have the formation of the blood clot. So your fibrin incorporates itself with red blood cells. It kind of mixes together and everything, and you form what you call a fibrin mesh. Yeah? And that fibrin mesh is going to form a thrombus, a blood clot, above the site of damage. So you end up completely sealing it off, and that should allow, if we just draw it here, blood to continue to flow through. That's the idea in theory about how this process is going to work. Although unfortunately, it is not all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to thrombosis, yeah? So what can actually happen is your blood flow can completely block the artery. So I've drawn it in this plane, but maybe it might be a bit easier to accept here. So say if we have damage there, for example, we'll just do like this. And if I change back to this pink color, sometimes the thrombus is going to come into the blood vessel. So it's meant to cover up that certain damage, but it can also invaginate into the blood vessel, right? Then, again, guys, same thing that we did earlier. Remember this, you'll get marks in exam. Reduced blood flow to organs, inability to respire aerobically because you're getting less oxygen, yeah? That means that if they can't respire aerobically, they can't meet the metabolic demand, which is going to cause cell death. Just remember that whole process because that will get you a lot of marks in exams. Now, what can also happen to blood clots is, say I have a blood clot. A lot of people have this. It's called a deep vein thrombosis, but they have a blood clot in their legs. That blood clot can move throughout the body. Yeah, it can become dislodged, travel through blood vessels, go and block different arteries in the body. If it blocks an artery leading to the brain, they get a stroke. If it blocks an artery that's a coronary artery, which is like the arteries that supply the different chambers of your heart, that can lead to a heart attack. Or, guys, really big language, if you want to just show off a bit to your examiner, myocardial infarction. Also, heart failure is another consequence when the heart isn't pumping blood sufficiently enough. Maybe because if there's less blood flow to the heart walls, then the muscles can't contract as sufficiently, right? Cool. And I just thought it's kind of good to know, maybe not too relevant for A-level, but your symptoms of for example, of cardiovascular disease, they tend to be chest pain, shortness of breath, and sweating. So I just remembered those are the big 3 symptoms about your consequences of cardiovascular disease. Okay, so you know what it is. We've got 3 questions for you to try. Just so that it might appear clearly, I'm just going to zoom in a bit. So that's question 1 about thrombophilia. Question 2 about plasmin. Question 3 about heart attacks. So pause the video, have a go at these questions, and we'll go to the answers now. Okay, answer time. So for the first question that we had, guys, it gave you a part of the process. All you need to do is just say what it does, right? This is just a recall question. So, thrombin, as we mentioned earlier, enzyme, catalyzed conversion of soluble fibrinogen into insoluble fibrin. I know it's not in this mark scheme, but it's really good practice to just keep saying that. And then we know that fibrin forms a mesh with your red blood cells to form the clot. Happy days. Cool. This question, I actually did want to go back to the question. So you can see the answer there. If we go back to the question, how do we get that information? Because a lot of you wouldn't have heard about plasmin before, right? What I know is that I can look at this diagram here. I already know that tranexamic acid, they've told me, inhibits the activity of plasmin. We can see in the diagram what plasmin does. Plasmin is going to break down fibrin. So you get fibrin to digested fibrin. So clearly plasmin is inhibiting blood clotting by degrading fibrin. Yeah. So when we get back to this question, we know that this is what fibrin does. That's the first thing to mention. This is what fibrin actually does. Forms a mesh that collects the platelets and the red blood cells. Cool. We can see that the tranexamic acid, if it inhibits plasmin, then it's going to stop the breakdown of fibrin. Yeah. Again, from that diagram, if we inhibit this plasmin, apologies, it's not working. If we inhibit plasmin, then that means that this process of the breakdown of fibrin cannot occur. The digestion of fibrin can't occur. So that means we're going to have more fibrin, which means that we can have more clots, or that the clots will remain. I hope that makes sense. And for the final question, again, thinking about consequences, right? A platelet inhibitor reduces the risk of clot forming, right? That's because the platelets, obviously, they release thromboplastin, important part of the process, yeah? If we have less blood clots, then that means it's less likely that those consequences of thrombosis will occur. There's less likely that someone might get coronary artery disease. There's less chance of a stroke, for example. So if we go back to the question, it was specifically talking about the heart attack, which is why you would then relate it to the coronary arteries, yeah? Cool. I hope that explanation makes a lot of sense. Okay, and that is kind of a wrap on the lesson, but again, we're going to go through the A-star tips. Now, when you have processes like this in biology, just memorize it. Literally, just memorize it. So same thing with atherosclerosis. Just memorize this process of blood clotting. I know there's a lot of different proteins that they do have really similar names, and it is really annoying, but you just need to know where each one comes in the process, because that will help you to get marks in the exam. Yeah? Again, we're thinking atherosclerosis, if we have that increased blood pressure leading to damage to the artery, which is going to cause thrombosis, we always want to link those two together. So like, when you're revising, I'd go straight from atherosclerosis into thrombosis. I get both processes done at once. Yeah. I'd also say just have knowledge of the different medications that they use to treat cardiovascular disease. Like, for example, you have statins, which are going to lower cholesterol. You've got antihypertensives, which are going to be medications to reduce the blood pressure. You have diuretics, which they make you pee, and that also, in effect, will reduce the blood pressure as well. Another one I forgot to mention here that they like on your spec as well is stents. So what a stent is, essentially, it's like almost, it's this thing that they put in blood vessels that keep it dilated. So like, it's a bit of machinery. I'll quickly draw something here. If this is your blood vessel, a stent is gonna be like a mechanical piece of machinery that they use to just push it open. Not the best diagram, but it kind of just makes the blood vessel nice and dilated. What do you not want to do? Don't forget soluble fibrinogen and insoluble fibrin. I know it wasn't in the marks we had in this question, but I promise you they do really look for it. And my teacher was definitely stressing it. Say soluble fibrinogen and insoluble fibrin. So just make sure to do that. And also, something that some people do, especially when you get into year 13, a lot of people do confuse thrombosis and atherosclerosis. So just make sure that you constantly remind yourself of which is which. Okay, so thank you so much for watching that video. I hope it's been really, really helpful in terms of getting you to understand more about this process. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Like the video, please, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow the Instagram and the TikTok at demola, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.